Welcome to another episode of California Unearthed. This is a kind of a spontaneous adventure today. It's been raining here in the Redding area for the last few weeks, so I haven't had time to do this. I've been wanting to, but weather permitted. It's only kind of sprinkling today, so we're going to attempt this. This is a place in Shasta County that I first started coming to when I first started visiting the area. I'm originally from Southern California, but I first started coming up here in the early 80s, and my Aunt Jean brought me here on my first visit to Redding and Shasta County. And obviously from the title of this post, you know where we're going. It's the Pioneer Baby Grave out of Old Shasta. And so let's go up there and we'll tell you a little bit about the history, show you the grave, and have a little bit of fun on an adventure. So we just pulled up to California Historic Landmark 377, the Pioneer Baby Grave of Charles Brownstein. The plaque and the bricks were provided by the Shasta Historical Society and the E. Vitus Clampus chapter here in Redding. They donated their time and their money to create this beautiful monument for the Pioneer Baby. And what we're going to do is we're going to have Samantha read the plaque for us and see what this says, and then we're going to go down to the grave.
Pioneer Baby's Grave. Charles, infant son of George and Helena Cohen Brownstein of Red Bluff, died December 14, 1864. He was buried near land established by the Shasta Hebrew congregation as a Jewish cemetery in 1857. One of the earliest such cemeteries in the region, since there was no Jewish burial ground in Red Bluff. Charles' parents made the arduous journey to Shasta, lay their baby to rest. Concern for the fate of their grave led to the rerouting of Highway 299 in 1923. California Registered Historical Landmark number 377, first registered July 28, 1942, plaque placed by the State Department of Parks and Recreation in cooperation with the Shasta Historical Society, Kevin Hollis Moss Historical Fund, and Trinitarius Chapter 62, the Clampus Vitus, July 28, 1990.
So this is the Pioneer Baby Grave that was put here in 1864. Once again, baby Charles was brought here from Red Bluff. It was a day and a half journey by wagon for the Brownsteins. Both the husband and wife were from Poland. They came to America through San Francisco on separate trips. They didn't know each other in Poland. They met in San Francisco. Came up to Red Bluff, got married, and lived in Red Bluff and owned a business there in Red Bluff for quite a few years. Had, I believe, 4 or 5 children, but one of them being Charles here. And when he passed away in 1864, this was the only Jewish cemetery in Northern California, here in Old Shasta. And at that point, Old Shasta was the county seat. Redding did not exist. So their day-and-a-half journey here by wagon was a very arduous, like the plaque said, journey just to bury their son in hollow ground. According to Jewish burial rites, the dead need to be buried within a day or two of their passing, because the Jewish people do not believe in embalming or anything like that, preserving the body. So they need to be put in the ground within a day or two of their death. And so they made that journey the day after he passed and took the day-and-a-half to get here. And the cemetery was kind of forgotten about for quite a few years until the old stagecoach road that went to Weaverville was going to become the new highway. Cars were being invented in the early 1900s. So around 1914, they cut the road to go into Weaverville from Redding. And when they did that, they found the grave once again. But at that point, this whole area was covered in manzanita brush and trees, and it was kind of buried in the brush. Nobody knew it was here. This is not the only grave in the cemetery at one point. There was other Jewish people buried here as well. I have not been able to find a record of if they are still here or if the families exhumed them and took them to other burial areas. So nobody really knows if there's other people buried here or not still to this day, but there were people here other than Charles. But with Mother Nature and time, they've kind of buried the other headstones, and they don't exist anymore, or they were either that or taken out and buried somewhere else. But after 1914, when they found it, they wanted to preserve the grave and save it. So what they did was they built a barrier, a wooden barrier around it, and they created the highway on either side of the grave. So if you look, take the camera point down that direction, you'll see the old highway, part of the old highway. That clearing is what used to be the road. And if we go down the other side of the grave, we will view the other side of the highway. That was the northbound, well not northbound, but westbound side. While doing my research, I found a photograph of the old highway. I believe it was back in 1936, and the picture I'm about to
I have
put
my
on
dates
here
incorrect.
is that
This
photo that I
photograph is
found.
dated
This is the
1939,
old
not
highway next to the
1936.
grave.
But we are looking eastbound towards Redding, and this photograph is courtesy of the Shasta Historical Society. While doing my research, I found this in their photo collection.
So after they found the grave and they built the highway, what they did was they were able to find a few of the other children that were still alive, and they invited them up here for a dedication of their brother, and they dedicated the grave, dedicated the highway, and the family came up for that dedication. I believe it was 2 or 3 sisters and a brother. They knew nothing about their baby brother being buried up here. Well, they knew that they had a brother and knew they were buried. He was buried somewhere in the area, but didn't know exactly where. So that was kind of neat when they found that out. And then when they redid the highway and created the new, what's existing Highway 299 right up here on the hill, Caltrans created the highway away from the grave so that people wouldn't vandalize it or nothing would happen to it, so it could be preserved even more. Unfortunately, in 1989, a young man came down here and stole the headstone. The headstone that is existing now has been here since 1990, thanks to Allen and Dahl, who I believe, if I'm correct, donated the marble, and the Temple Beth Israel Synagogue here in Reading helped out with the wording, the Hebrew wording on the tombstone. But the original headstone was taken in, like I said, 1989 by a young man. And fortunately, that young man turned himself in, and they found the headstone inside his garage, and they returned it. Unfortunately, the headstone was too damaged to put back on the grave. So what they did was they donated the headstone to the Shasta historic park here in Old Shasta. So it's sitting in the museum in the collections. It's not on display. They brought it out once for the 150th anniversary for the members of Temple Beth Israel to look at. But the thing about it was the young man who originally stole the headstone also helped out on putting it back together again and creating what it is now. So ever since then, they've had it off the road, and you can see people here leave tokens. My daughter as well, who's behind the camera right now, leave tokens for the baby Charles and flowers. Everybody that comes down here seems to leave something.
So when I was about 6 or 7, I put one of these little pennies up here because at the time that's all we had to leave. The Charles says, Charles, son of George and Helena Brownstein of Red Bluff, born April 6th, 1864, died December 14th, 1864.
What about the Hebrew part? Can you read that?
Huh. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll try. Nope.
So if you want to know a little bit more about the baby grave, the Temple Beth Israel Synagogue has put up a video through, I believe, KCET, and I will put a link to that video in the description below. And it tells the entire history of the Brownstein family and of the baby grave. That's where I got a lot of my details about this, is from that video. So like I said, I'll put a link to that video. And I would definitely say come out here, take a visit. This is another Jewish cemetery once again. The land is owned by Temple Beth Israel. It is about 3 acres. This land here, and just on the other side of the highway a little bit, is also part of that. And once again, it is owned by Temple Beth Israel. They come out here and celebrate the baby's grave about once a year on an anniversary. So if you do come out here, be respectful, bring something for the baby, have a good time. It's a very special place to come and visit. And I know I enjoy coming out here and just spending a little bit of time. So come out, take a visit, enjoy.